Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm braving the cold to come answer another one of your questions. So let's just jump right into it. The question for today reads, I love these vlogs you're doing. Would you consider doing one on fear to sleep on the road and how you felt when you got started? I want to car camp, but I keep getting scared. Should I make sure there are other campers around? I actually have a lot of thoughts on this question, and it's something that I've been asked a lot, the fear of sleeping on the road. This is one of those things that it's going to differ person to person. Somebody's going to go out camping and they're going to feel completely comfortable, completely at home, not get scared at all, and have the best night's sleep of their life. Or you are going to get the absolute worst sleep of your life, and you're going to be up with every single twig, snap, wind gust, footstep, car passing by, every single thing, and you're going to be totally on edge. I think being totally on edge the first couple nights that you're camping is really normal and a very shared experience with a lot of people, probably more than people would ever let on that that's happening to. So I think it's just one of those things that when you feel like you're totally vulnerable and out and alone, that's why a lot of people choose to car camp instead of tent camp when they're by themselves. The car just makes you feel like you have that extra security because you can lock the doors, you can drive away, you have all of that in place. But I will say, because your question specifically asked about my beginnings, I did have a lot of trouble falling asleep while I was camping by myself at the beginning. That is why at the very beginning, like before I got on the road full time, I car camped in state parks close to where I lived when I still lived in an apartment. So I would go out to a local state park on a Sunday or a Monday night because I did hair and I usually worked on the weekends. So my weekend started Sunday afternoon and then went Monday, Tuesday. So a lot of the times I was in a state park, but I was camping relatively alone. Like there wasn't usually a lot of campers on a Monday or Tuesday night in Indiana State Park. They just aren't that busy. So while there are camp hosts usually and other people kind of around during the day, at night there's usually one or two campers usually. And I really got a good sense of being able to fall asleep while you're out camping. And it is nerve-wracking, but it's also something that you have to practice doing. Just the same way as when you move into a new house or a new apartment, you're kind of up, you're kind of on edge because you can't feel out what's going on. Nowadays, I really don't have trouble sleeping at all. And I wish I could give you like a bunch of tips on what to do if you're scared to sleep at night, but there's really not much other than knowing that you did every single thing you could to keep yourself safe before you go to bed, and then that's about it. I kind of came to the conclusion at a certain point in my journey that I was like, I'm out here to live life. I'm locked in my car. Everything is done. There's not much I can do about it. If something happens, something happens. But getting a bad night's sleep when you're on the road full time just wears on you day after day after day. And eventually you're just going to have to sleep and you're going to have to get comfortable doing it. So if that looks like for you, making sure you have all your window covers up, to make sure that you have your keys next to your bed, to make sure you have pepper spray or something, whatever is going to make you feel comfortable, I always recommend doing. Obviously having the dog with me, she pops up at like any noise at the beginning, and then now she rarely gets up at all because we've all just kind of gotten used to it. Even staying in rest areas and truck stops when people are constantly closing and opening their doors really close to you, revving their engines, honking, trucks with their backup beepers on all the time. You just kind of get used to it. And I hate to say, it just takes time and it takes practice. I don't do anything crazy other than make sure that the doors are locked and to make sure I know where my keys are. And that's about it. I don't sit there and overthink it these days. Again, like I said, it's not worth me wasting a ton of time and energy to sit there and be scared all the time. I also recommend for people who are scared at the beginning, a lot of people use alcohol or drugs to try to numb that out and fall asleep. And I would argue that that's making things so much more unsafe because if there were something to happen, not even maybe something bad or nefarious, like it could just be something as serious as like there's a fire or there is a storm or something where you need to get up and like leave, you are then somehow inebriated in some form or the other, even if it's just Benadryl or something, and you may not have your wits about you to drive. But I also understand when it's so difficult to fall asleep to get a restful night's sleep. So I understand turning to having a couple glasses of wine or taking a Benadryl or, you know, smoking or something like that. Like I totally understand all of those things. And if that makes you feel comfortable, if you are fine with that, I would say you're an adult, do whatever you want, but it's not something I would recommend. I think a lot of people do on their own channels. Like they pour a glass of wine so then they can fall asleep and be done for the night. I think it's better to get your body used to relaxing in that environment. And then you're always going to stay aware kind of in the back of your mind. You're not like numbing everything out. This is where like the practice part comes in. Practice sleeping in your own driveway, in your car. Your neighbors are going to be in and out. People are going to be driving up and down your street. It's going to simulate that same kind of environment, or go to a local state park or something like that. Go to your local Cracker Barrel and sleep in their parking lot and see how that goes. Just because you're not traveling doesn't mean you can't do those things. And so I feel like that is a part to like practice. You're close to home then. A lot of people use earplugs, which I recommend like loops. I have loops, earplugs, because a lot of the times my boyfriend and we're not on the same sleep schedule. And so it just, when I need the extra sleep, I will pop my earplugs in and they're comfortable enough to sleep, and I can hear enough, like if somebody needed to wake me up or if I needed my alarm or something like that, I can wake up. You can always do something like that. I do sometimes, now that I've been on the road for like 5 years, because this is my everyday life, I will take like half a Benadryl if I'm just having trouble like falling asleep, but then it's not so much Benadryl that like I can't wake up and do something if something needed to happen. I also have a really low tolerance to all of that stuff, so I just have to be careful, but I don't do it very often. I try not to be reliant on it, but I can't say that like I don't sometimes fall into that category. But it's not because I'm scared to sleep, it's because of like life, you know, just like regular stuff. Because anymore I rarely ever think about sleeping on the road. And I would say any time now that I feel that much anxiety about where I am, I probably shouldn't be sleeping there, because I'm so much more in tuned with what is normal and what is not. If I'm starting to get like a suspicious vibe somewhere, sometimes I will pull in somewhere to take like a break and to go sit in the back and collect myself, eat, rest, or whatever, and kind of like continue to suss out what's happening. But if I've determined in that hour or so I need to move on, I've at least taken a break and can formulate another plan of somewhere else to sleep. But if I'm that sketched out, I normally just don't stay anymore. But it takes a while to kind of get your sea legs with that and to determine what does feel safe for you and what doesn't. There's been plenty of times that I have felt that way in the past, and the nice part is about traveling, you can always move on to somewhere else. Is that the best time? Absolutely not. Like, it sucks when you have to leave somewhere when you were so looking forward to just being done for the day. But especially traveling by yourself, if your gut is screaming that it's wrong, I never want to regret not listening to my gut, and I will move on even if I'm kicking and screaming and I need, you know, another Red Bull or something to like get myself going. I can vividly remember like one place I had tried 2 or 3 places. Each of the places I was trying, I think like one was a rest area that had been marked on iOverlander or something, and then all of a sudden there was a bunch of signs up that said like 2-hour parking, and so I know I needed like more than 2 hours of sleep, and so I moved on. I tried a Walmart. There was a ton of no overnight parking signs, so it clearly was something new that like hadn't been marked on iOverlander. So then I tried the Cracker Barrel in that town, and I went, pulled in next to a bunch of RVs. This is back when I was in my pilot, and I just sat there for a second because I had such like an off feeling about it, even though there was a bunch of RVs in the parking lot. Like, it wasn't any different than any other Cracker Barrel. I definitely wasn't there by myself. It wasn't that late at night. It was maybe like 10 o'clock. Like, Cracker Barrel had just closed. So, but I just had a weird feeling about it. So I sat in the back without my window covers because my back windows were tinted. And I watched like a group of like 4 or 5 people like circling the RVs, kind of like casing them a little bit. And I was like, that was weird. Let me just wait a second. And maybe like 20 minutes later, they all came back and kind of got closer and closer. And I was like, this probably isn't a great part of town. I need to move on. So I sat there for a second, obviously make sure my doors were locked. I hadn't been out of the car at all. I could crawl from the front to the back in that car. And I just looked up another place and I ended up having to drive another hour that night. But the next place I came upon was like a really, really nice rest area that allowed overnight. There was a ton of other vans there. Like, it had a totally different vibe. And so did it suck to drive that extra hour? Absolutely. But I got 18,000 times better sleeping at that second location, or I guess fourth for that night, than any of the other ones, because I would have been worried and looking around all night and like listening to every single footstep outside of my car. I don't think that will ever go away per se, but I do feel like I have pretty good discernment between how all of that works now, and I can tell when a place is just an active area, there's just a lot of nightlife, there's just people kind of milling about, and when it seems a little bit more suspicious or like ill-intended. And it's kind of like what people say with like street smarts, you just kind of start to develop that as time goes on. But that's why practicing it at a state park or something that's just not as busy, it's not something that's full all the time, you can kind of start to get that feeling going doing it in your own neighborhood. Because if you feel safe living in your apartment or your house or wherever you live, it's a good place to start and practice, because you're outside of your house, you're outside of your comfort zone, you're in your car or you're wherever, and you're practicing how it feels to not have those 4 walls around you. And so I think it's a good place to start. Now, I will say the climate of the world has obviously changed a lot since I first got on the road and to now. So in the ambulance, I do have cameras that go full around. So I have like one that's a backup camera, I have 2 on the sides, and then I have 1 on the front that I can literally just like flip on, and I can see on a monitor of anything that's going on around me, and I can have it record when I'm parked. I think one, that's just safe in general to have. It is an expensive thing. I did like sink a little bit of money into it, unfortunately, but especially with the dog in the car and stuff, I don't want people trying the doors, or if she's in there, I just want things recorded just because anymore these days. So investing in something like that where you have cameras maybe in the front or back, so if your window covers are up, you can flip that on and you can see what's going on around your vehicle. They make them for RVs too. I think the kit that I bought is like for Class A RVs, because it helps you change lanes and stuff to see your blind spots. But I just use it to be able to look outside or to back up, obviously, to park, things like that, because the ambulance is a little bit bigger. It's more so for like surrounding safety when I'm driving. But if I was feeling weird somewhere or I heard a noise that I couldn't quite tell, I can have that park assist on where it's recording all of it and I can go back and look at it, or I can have that monitor in the back with me just running off of my battery to see what's happening. I think a lot of people these days have dash cams and stuff for the same reason. Just because things have changed a lot, it's always good to have that extra layer of safety. And I think cameras are not as expensive as they used to be. So if you can even find a cheap set to like keep on your car or outside, it might be worth having if you can just flip on your phone or flip on a monitor and see what's going on out there to maybe ease your mind a little bit so you can fall asleep a little bit easier. I'm not sure what else to recommend other than to practice. Like I've said a million times, I'm sure already in this video, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but you're doing something new, you're doing something out of your comfort zone, and your body just hasn't gotten used to that yet. And I think no matter how well practiced you are, like if somebody said you need to sleep in a tent tomorrow, and I've been on the road for how long? I've been camping tons of times in my life for years and years and years now, and if I had to go back to tent camping right this second, I I would have those same feelings all over again because like I'm not used to tent camping. I think the last time I tent camped was like the month of May in 2021 before I decided to ditch the tent and just start sleeping in my Honda CRV before I started this channel. And Pip and I did the tent for an entire month in a very familiar spot to me. It was a place that I had gone a ton of times in my Class C. It was somewhere I was really familiar with, but I was never like fully at ease in the tent. That's why I just switched to sleeping in the CRV. I've always been more comfortable in the car, even though I have less space. It's just always been something that's more comforting to me, whereas a lot of people maybe feel more comfortable out in their tent and they like being closer to nature and being able to hear everything. So that's part of also like seeing what you're comfortable with, and you don't have to force yourself to do something that isn't getting any better. If you try it more than a handful of times and nothing is getting better, you probably need to switch up your routine. Nothing is worth the stress and anxiety and not getting any sleep, because then you can't enjoy your travels. So if you have a few nights in an area and you really tried it in your car and you just can't get comfortable with it, maybe that's the time to have like a safety kind of budget where you get an Airbnb, you get a hotel, you get a paid campsite or something like that, so you can feel more comfortable as you ease yourself into it. I unfortunately did not have a budget for any of those things, but I'm not going to say throughout the time that I've been on the road, if I genuinely cannot find a place, I will go stay at a state park. I'll pay the $20 to go do that, just so I know that I can stay there and I'm not going to run into any trouble that night. It happens fewer and fewer and fewer the longer I'm on the road, but it's always an option. You can always figure it out, but the practice is what's going to help get your body adjusted. So I hope that helps. I know it was a long-winded answer, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!